So, we wanted to talk a little bit today about online events, and you could let's think about how we want to look at this, Greg. You have, like the classic webinar, and I'll derisively call it, death by PowerPoint, right? The
Yeah,
old
right,
meeting
right.
thing. But then you have a more engaging, live, hopefully interactive version of that. Let's say Zoom, since I'm a big advocate for Zoom, right?
We were one of the first users of Zoom, I think, when they first came out.
Yeah,
so
we were
we've
like
been
number
doing it a
12
lot.
or something.
Yeah, and we want to compare this to, as you say this, to like live events.
Yeah.
We've done another segment on live events, and we get a lot of people that say that use those as a mainstay of their marketing. These work and can work just as well or even better, and they have a lot of advantages over live events. Number one, you can stay in your office or at your home. Number two, you can market to and have clients from anywhere in the country or anywhere maybe in the world, depending on where you're licensed. So this is one reason this can really explode your business. And maybe you don't want to, travel all over the country or state, or maybe your clients don't want to drive into a seminar. So this can make a big difference in your
Well, hell,
business.
in some markets, L.A. or New York, right?
The traffic is bad enough,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's they live in Long Island and you're in Jersey. They live in, there's places, right?
Or LA anywhere.
Oh, yeah. But there's webinar, live interactive, there's pretend live webinar. What's that app we've been, Ever
Webinar.
Yeah, Ever Webinar.
And there's other versions of this,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it means that you record it possibly once live, or maybe you just record it, and then you can play it, and it looks like it's live, and it looks like it's got interactions.
Along with playing the chat box.
Yeah.
and
It looks like
everything else,
you can kind of put in fake
Yeah.
questions and go, oh, I have a question from so and so, and they want to know this, and it looks like it's live. And what'll happen is you can put your set appointment here, and we're going to talk about how to do appointments in a second, but you can put your offers and everything on the side, so it's real interesting.
Yeah, and then there's just doing a live cast, so you can, we could be on Zoom and have nobody else on there, but then we live cast it out to YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook, etc., right? So live cast out to your Facebook business page.
Which this can be live casted too as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, so the live interactive can be live cast, the webinar can be live cast, the pretend live, I guess, the first time. But online, the dynamic is different, in part because...
Another version is the recorded, which is not our favorite one, I guess.
Yeah, I was doing that as pretend live, but yeah,
Right,
you could have a...
Yeah, so the difference between that, the pretend live, this is one that looks interactive. It'll look like there's a lot of interaction happening at the same time. This one is, and we see some people doing this one,
we're registered here for our training session, and it doesn't...
Yeah, it really looks just like it's pitched as a webinar, but it really is just somebody recording their PowerPoint presentation, and there's maybe a pitch at the end, but it doesn't have it's not like this where it looks like to everybody's, from the client's point, the prospect's point of view, that it's a live webinar. This one, most people are, I don't want to say fooled because that sounds bad, but fooled into thinking that this thing is live. It's treated in the registration like we're going to have a live webinar at 5 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock you register and it looks like it's live, even though in reality there's like 20 of these going on, or really anytime it's going on, but it's live.
Well, by the way, the dead giveaway on that, and you've probably seen some, the dead giveaway is always, there's one today at 5, or there's one today at 2, there's one today at 5, and there's one tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a lot of them available.
Yeah. Or, I mean, it's in 30 minutes, or it's in 5 hours, right? So,
right, but it's compelling, and if you're not seeing a lot of these like we do all the time, it'll look to the regular civilian that it's live. But anyway, the point is these are clearly promoted as it's a recording. And
sometimes this is like the elaborate explainer videos.
Yeah.
The animated stuff.
Listen to my my speech on this or that, and this is our least favorite because number one, it's clear that it's not live, and people know that it's not interactive.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, but all of these things, well, not all of them, the live interactive can replicate the dinner meetings, lunch meetings, almost to a T, and can be nearly as effective on generating appointments. And with the exception of actually meeting people face to face, although you accomplish that, so it's not really a
Yep.
deficit.
Yeah, live interactive is their face on the screen, not just a chat box.
That's a good way of saying it. In fact, we've done it where anybody who didn't have an appointment yet, we pull them off into a breakout room on Zoom and have somebody make the appointment, then put them back into the main meeting. Right?
Yeah, and that works great.
Yeah. And
The last time we did that, we had 100%
Yeah.
set appointments.
Yeah.
It's not an exaggeration.
yeah. So what happens here is on a live interactive Zoom is and I'll say my only hesitation about saying this. If you get people and there's only a phone number and they haven't engaged by video, oftentimes you end up trying to have a conversation with somebody who's not really there.
Right.
And it's the problem with webinars generally is they're at their desk, they back-to-back appointments, somebody no-show, they log in, and their level of engagement. See, at least if they had to get in the car and drive 15 minutes or 30 minutes to come do it, they're engaged in being there. And with the webinar, it's much more like, at any of these levels, it's more like an infomercial where you've really got to work to keep them tuned to that channel.
Right.
You've really got to work to keep them tuned in. But if I can I don't care whether it's 5 people or 100 people, and get them where their video is live, where they're there, where I can ask them questions, where I get their name on the screen, then we're having the same kind of race that we're having with a live in-person.
Yeah, and you can facilitate this in a lot of ways, like the reminders for it, which we talked in our other segment where we talked about how you want to remind people to show up and increase your show rates to your seminars or your webinars. If when you do the reminders, you let them know, one of our rules is that we want you there live. So make sure you show up on a laptop or a tablet, not your iPhone.
At your desk.
At your desk.
Not on a cellular connection.
Yeah, and we want you there live on video because we're going to have interactive conversations. So you make it fun. You make it fun that this is going to be a really fun event. And if you put some personality, inject some personality, again, we've got another segment on how to give yourself a personality in all of this. Yeah. So if you do that,
and pretend you do,
or pretend you do, right? Yeah, like I have to. So as you do the reminders, you can let them know. Plus, at the beginning of the webinar, we'll always tell everybody, hey, everybody, turn your video on. This is an interactive webinar, and establish rules. And this would just be like elementary school teaches in the first day of school. We've got rules in the classroom. You've got to sit in your desk. You got to do this. We have rules in the webinar. One of the rules is keep your audio on mute so that we don't have background noise. But we want you to interact. So we want you to interact. So we absolutely want you to interact. Video on, audio on mute, and give them some rules. So that makes it more interactive, and they know that you're going to be talking. And then, by the way, you do engage them. You do talk to them and ask them some questions. So you're from this place, and we've gathered information on them before. So we're not asking them embarrassing questions, but we do stuff to engage people during the webinar. So the more you can do that, the more it's just like a real live seminar, just like you normally teach. If you're the kind of person that teaches a seminar and you never talk to the people personally, you won't have as good of results anyway. If you're teaching a seminar and you tend to talk to people personally and engage them and ask them questions, you'd have better results. So it's the same way in a webinar. When we hear people say, well, the webinars don't work as much as live seminars, yeah, if at a seminar you stood in front and you just lectured and you never engaged anybody, that wouldn't work as well either. So it's the same at a live
we had a client who was doing live webinars, the COVID disaster, is
He was doing live seminars, and then he had COVID disaster, I think, right?
right. But
Yeah.
then he went straight from live seminar, engaging, really nice guy, to pretend live webinar, recorded something and had them land on a page and played it.
Well,
And-
yeah, it was this one, I think.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was this.
yeah.
It was a recorded webinar.
presentation.
And I don't think he pitched it as this. He didn't do it the way we talked about, where it had the interaction. It built in so it looked like a live webinar. So there was no interaction at all. And again, it wasn't like this one that we're telling you that is much better deal. And his results plummeted.
Well, let's step back a second, because we may have gotten ahead of ourselves. Is all of these online seminars can be for client engagement. In other words, I see people who will meet with their clients personally once or twice a year, and that's it. Compare that with every month I have a client meeting that's interactive. They can ask questions, but I'm presenting individual topics.
On a real interesting topic that
yeah.
might be, that
Yeah.
should be very relevant to them.
Yeah. Or I might have one once a week on different topics, right? I might have topic A on the first week and topic B and topic C, designed to create a segment of my clients to show up, right? That's much more effective and efficient, especially market just crashed and we know that a bunch of people are panicking. Well, why not have a group session, right? And I can do 20 or 30 minutes on why investors who write out highs and lows end up better in the long run, and I can give them the data and the stats and so forth, and I can show them the 100-year graph and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, instead what usually happens with
dive
advisors
under
is,
the
yeah,
desk,
bad
yeah.
things happen and they dive under the table and hope that nobody calls.
Yeah. And then I can use all of these for referral events, right? So that's an event where maybe I'm doing it for clients and I'm encouraging them to invite a friend and creating a mechanism for their friend to register, for them to register an event, for them to sponsor them, and to create topics that their friends are going to be just as excited about as our clients are going to be. And then I can market just like a dinner meeting through social media, direct mail. Hell, I could do TV, I could do radio, I can do a publicity tour. A mutual friend of ours, he does big seminars like Fill a Ballroom for people who had declared bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And what he told me was, the biggest worry that somebody has who filed bankruptcy is, can I get a credit card? And can I buy a car? And how do I fix my credit, right? So he had a law firm, and he had a car dealer, and he had a credit card company, and something else that I'm forgetting who would, pitch him, right? Same idea as a financial advisor, although it's probably not the target audience in most cases. But he went from show up in each city in a ballroom, marketing it through direct mail, to marketing it through direct mail and do it on an online format, and his results were identical. So instead of him, if he always stayed in the Four Seasons or the Ritz, so it wasn't rough duty. In fact, I think he was.
But he had to fly and travel those places.
Yeah, in his Gulfstream. But
Okay.
yeah. But you get the idea.
Yeah.
It's like LeGrand,
Yeah.
But the reality is he managed to get the same numbers, and the only thing they had to work on a little bit was the car dealership, because the car dealerships were showing up with the Mustang and one thing or another,
Right,
and they'd
sure.
sit in the car. So they had to tweak that a little bit to get the same conversion results. But for all of it, they were getting the same results with promoting it by direct mail and putting them in a live video session. And then he shifted it to pretend live, because what he would do is he had a little elaborate, not little, but he had an elaborate home studio by the time he got done with all this stuff. He made making a lot of money. But he had a home studio, and what he would do is he'd record an introduction with the same set and everything else that everything else was. So he'd come on and say, "Hey, Denver, I'm so happy to be here." And at some point he'd say, "And thank you for Emic Oils who are here," or whatever it is, and so forth. And then they'd cut into just the same one.
Yeah.
And then somewhere at the end, they would cut back in, hey, in Denver, this has been really, really great. It'd be like, I'm going to take a little bit of a break, but let me tell you about, this. And then he'd come back and say, Denver's been great. And so really what it was is, and they were all day seminars, by the way.
Right.
So he had, 3 hours, but he cut in 5 minutes at the
Yeah,
front.
you
5
injected
minutes-
a little segment for each
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah, so
And the
it's all-
same results.
Yeah, so it's all pre-recorded except for that. And then they just market it to each city, right? And they had a live event in Denver campaign. They had a live event, but it wasn't like they just broadcast it everywhere. They individually, each city, and promoted it, and the results were the same. Except that he didn't have travel expenses, he didn't have to rent a ballroom, he didn't have to get in his private plane, travel and destitute.
Yeah.
But you get the idea. So, but this can be same audience as it would be a luncheon or a dinner meeting. It can be referrals that your clients are bringing. It can be client engagement. What we've talked about in a different segment here is it can also be like circle of influence type of group. So I could do a webinar, a Zoom interactive, a pretend live webinar, a live cast for a CPA's clientele. And in fact, I could do it the pretend live with an introduction that says, like my guy's name's Robin Smith. So, hey, I'm so happy to be here with Robin's clients. I know that he's told me ahead of time that you guys are very interested in these topics. So I want to make sure we had these topics. Click. It's already pre-recorded if I want.
Yeah, and understand this, that when we talk to a lot of advisors, that we ask them what their marketing is. They say, well, I'm trying to build a circle of influence with a lawyer, a CPA, and have them refer people to me. And we've said this before in other segments, but those guys suck at referring people. They're not good at selling their own business. They're not good at selling yours. They're not going to be very good. But this can work great, and all they have to do is either through a couple methods that we can suggest, and we did it in the other segment, they can get people to come to your webinar, which is going to be their webinar, about the topic that's going to be compelling for their clients. And then, again, we're going to cover topics that will be important to them. And then there'll be some either common offer or just an offer for them to use your services.
Yeah, and that was, I was having a conversation recently, and same idea. And in the conversation, it was he had 100 clients, but there were 14 that really needed what we were doing. And I said, well, okay, great. Why don't we just schedule a free meeting for them? And, invite all 100, but, let me know which 14 really needed. And we'll just do a live Zoom meeting, and we'll do about 90 minutes on these topics. It'll be fully interactive. They can ask any questions. And, of course, what I would prefer is give me the list, and I'll promote it for them, right? But if I can't get that, I'm going to help him promote it, right?
Yeah, give them all the copy,
Yeah.
give them all the information how to promote it, maybe give them pre-addressed envelopes with everything.
Because, by the way, what he'll do otherwise is send them all one email.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to make sure they're marketing it the way that we would recommend marketing it.
Yeah, and probably tenfolding from what they will do by
Yeah.
default.
Yeah, these guys won't do it right, so we have to help them do it. But if you can help them market it right and have them, the circle of influence, market to your webinar, then you'll have results from those guys. Otherwise, you really won't.
Yeah. But so on that step back, it can be done for client engagement. It can be done for
Which
clients.
will help you retain your clients and then also potentially have them engage with you more with more business.
Well, yeah, like you'll be top of mind. Even if it's not that they're bringing a friend, they're much more likely to refer people to you.
Yeah, they'll remember you.
Yeah. That helps.
They won't forget your name.
Yeah. Well, and they'll remember you when they're having, lunch with friends. They'll
Yeah.
remember you when they're on the golf course one day or another. But it can. What was this? Oh, it can be marketed just like a dinner meeting or a lunch meeting, and it can be marketed to the clients of estate planning attorney, CPAs, et cetera, right? And by the way, this can expand way more than people think, right? we were talking before about the marketing to the Porsche dealers' customers.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a lot different than thinking, you know, it just has to be CPAs.
Well, and
Or-
your ideal client,
Yeah.
you know, if your ideal client might be,
Or to the football team, you know, the pro football team.
Yeah, yeah. The pilots of American Airlines, if that's your niche. You know, we had clients that are working with different groups like dentists. It could be marketed to all the dentists that meet some certain threshold.
Yeah, exactly. But then you can choose a format, and I've got to freely admit, this is my personal favorite.
Yeah.
And you know, with all of the live events and all the teaching classes we've done over the years, I like being able to say, "Well, Lynn, what do you think? You know, Joe, what do you think? Greg, what's your opinion? You know, Joe, do you have any questions about this topic?" I like being able to do that, right?
Sure.
And I like being able to, in Zoom's format, you know, let me have Bill come over here and talk to Mindy, and then she can schedule an appointment, then I can have the next person.
Yeah, this one allows you to schedule appointments more directly. This one allows you to have a link for people to schedule appointments and have it automated, which is nice. This one you can replay and replay and replay. This one may be able to do that. You could have a link somewhere.
It's more difficult because it's going out on
Right.
different people's platforms.
Right,
yeah.
and then this one's probably the worst one in that way. So this is kind of in order of it's more labor, but it'd probably be the most efficient. And then,
Well, or like a GoToMeeting standard death by PowerPoint webinar,
Yeah.
right? Which is this is probably my least favorite. This is you know.
yeah. Well,
yeah.
how to run the webinars is what we're talking about. If it's PowerPoint, slides, bullet, you can have some slides. It's not like you couldn't, but it should be more interactive with you as a person. And the slides are color.
And by the way, if you wanted an example of how to use slides, go back to any of Steve Jobs' old presentations. You know, look at how they used Keynote, and you know, whether it's the first iPhone reveal or the first iPad or any of the other, they were a master at, and many are, but master at, there wasn't 3 paragraphs to read on the thing.
Yeah, there's a few bullet points,
Yeah.
a compelling graphic, something like that. Just a small thing. The idea is it should just
Or
be
it's a cartoon.
Yeah, or a
Yeah,
big
yeah, yeah.
picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, something just a reference that is giving them an image. It's supposed to be an image and something to complement what you're talking about, not to replace what you're talking about. It's not supposed to be the story. It's supposed to complement the story.
Now, sympathetic coughing here.
Yeah. What I do, I mean, you can also use, like I use a whiteboard. You
Yeah,
can use a whiteboard
yeah,
type thing,
yeah.
which is good because then you're writing like what we're doing here.
Yeah. Or you're using humorous, you know. You've got the, well, I won't use the example. I was going to use a Frank Kern example, but that's, you know.
You got a video to
No,
play
no.
for. Is a video? No.
This was, he searched the internet for the world's biggest cock.
Oh,
And
that's
then-
nice.
And
Yeah.
the video, the slide he put up was this giant rooster.
Uh,
Yeah. But so, well, there you go.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that's Frank.
Yeah.
you know.
So you need to know your audience and who you're working with before you do that one.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, my favorite example is the Tony Robbins example. Is he was invited to a martial arts school convention.
Yeah.
And he was invited by Chuck Liddell and John Hackelman. And his vision was it was the MMA audience. In reality, most in the audience were there with their kids,
Like
families,
family kind of people,
families
yeah.
with their kids. And he went into full foul mouthed and gestations and one thing or another, to the point that you know families were leaving in disgust.
Yeah.
You know, because it was a mismatch. And
Yeah.
you've got to know what your audience is. But so as you go through this, anytime you can inject humor, right? Anytime you can do a little shock value, you know, I see people.
And those are good things to
Yeah.
do, by the way. Those are.
Yeah, you know, I see people using like the cat hanging from the ledge and so forth, which is probably overdone. But you know, you have I use the one with me pulling my hair out. But anytime you can inject humor or something like that. But the worst thing to do is feel like it's death by PowerPoint and
Yeah.
and have 12 bullet points that they're reading while you're going through it all. Kennedy will use it when he's making a sale, but he always uses that what do they call it?
That old style, like a video screen, where you just put a piece of paper on
Yeah,
the screen.
it shows. But he never, if you notice, either has like the video, the paper here, and then he has something blocking the rest of it.
Yeah.
Or it'll be, he puts it down and you get the idea, and just as you're trying to make notes on it, he pulls it away, right? And it's like the behind the door secret of what you're gonna be. But if you buy whatever it is he's selling, then of course you get all
Right.
of this stuff, right? But it'll always be kind of the, oh my God, give me more.
Yeah, so be careful about when you're doing these kind of things, taking if you're working with a company like Mass Mutual, Northwest Mutual, one of the companies, a lot of times they'll have presentation material for you, and it is a big, huge PowerPoint full of stuff with a bunch of graphs and things. Mostly don't use that. I mean, you can take a few of those pieces, and sometimes those are helpful, and they mean well, but that's not really what we're talking about when you're doing a webinar. It's not.
Or for compliance, it can be, you show the slides, but then you turn it on video and you inject them,
Exactly,
right?
or show, you don't have to show all the slides.
Yeah.
Don't change them around. We're not saying delete them, but not all of those should be. You wouldn't just go through each slide, no picture of yourself, and then talk. And what's even worse, rule number 1 of PowerPoint is never read the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So, we see a lot of people do these kind of webinars and they're just reading the PowerPoint.
Reading off them.
Nobody ever needs to hear that ever in the history of mankind. So
Whether it's live or online.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah.
So it needs to be when we say interactive, it really does need to be interactive.
As you know, I fucking hate PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
he doesn't like it. I like it a little bit. I think
Yeah.
it should be complimentary. So
Yeah,
that's the recommended
Yeah, I
version.
mean, if I was using PowerPoint, it would be cartoons and some humorous slides that somehow make the point.
Which would be perfect.
But that would be it, right?
Yeah.
And mostly, I'd rather do this or not have it at all. But anyway, on that note, you get the idea. Is in all of this stuff, and we talked about it in another segment. You've got to make an appointment to follow up, or it doesn't do you any good, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's just purely client engagement, and sometimes even then you want to.
Well, and the rule still applies that we said in the live webinar segment is the request for the appointment should happen in the beginning, the middle, and the end, if not all the way through.
Well, but keep in mind, it should happen when they register.
Right. Before at the
Yeah.
registration point.
Yeah.
So you do need to watch our segment on live events. It all applies here.
And when we do like the breakout room thing, that'll only be the people on our list that don't have an appointment yet.
Right. Well,
So-
and they can break out and confirm the appointment.
Yeah.
But again, don't ever do the big mistake of number one worst mistake is you do one of these things and then at the end you say, "Oh, if everybody's really really likes this and think it resonates with you, give us a call."
Yeah. No.
That's worst mistake.
Yeah.
Next worst mistake is you do the webinar and at the end of it you say, "And if you'd like to do this, click the button and set the appointment." At the end, because a lot of people drop off towards the end. That's the number one drop-off time, especially if they know you're winding up.
Yeah.
So it's got to be all throughout especially at these levels, your ask has to be all during it. But this one, it should be, in all of them, as Steve says, it's before when they register. If they are attending, though, it should be during all the way through.
Well, and to freely admit, I mean, we had one recently that was really short promotional cycle, not promoted very well, but also meant that there wasn't a lot of lead time to have all this stuff done ahead of time.
Right.
And so it was like the equivalent of being in a boardroom live meeting.
Yeah.
And like if I'm in a boardroom live meeting and I don't have appointments for everybody yet, or if I do, let's say there's 12 people, I'll go through and say, now Lynn, your appointment is Monday, Joe, your appointment is Tuesday. Sue, we don't have a time yet. Would this time or this time be better? Bill, would this time or this time be? And I'll just go through and, and make it right there in front of everybody. And when we did that, remember that Zoom meeting, we just did that
Yeah,
as a group
yeah.
and said, okay, and I know you have an appointment, you have an appointment, you have an appointment, Bill, I already talked to you, but Sue, Bill,
Yeah.
let's just schedule a time, and here's, are you better during the day or the evening?
Yeah, so you can just set the appointments right
Yeah.
in front of everybody and you just write them all down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's doable if you don't have a large group in that. This is one where we really did this last minute, so we
Yeah.
didn't have a really huge group.
But-
a bunch of them set appointments.
Yeah, and to
ahead.
be fair, about half of them had an appointment, about half
Right.
of them didn't.
Right.
So then you have the social proof of, and that's why I called out, you've got an appointment, you've got an appointment, you don't have
Yeah.
an appointment, and so you just register, you don't have an appointment. And it worked well that way.
So that's a possibility as well.
Yeah.
But again, the appointment is really critical, that it's asked for early, middle, and end. Don't do those other mistakes.
And we haven't talked much about content, but, I'll just leave you with one thought, is the mission is never really to teach much, is to keep the end in mind, right? So, I've heard it described as, tell them what to do, not how to do it. A lot of what I see is maybe even, what to do, but it's complicated enough and it's confusing enough that they know they need somebody to hold them by the
Sure.
hand, right? But you want to keep your end in mind, and the end is to get an appointment, phone, Zoom, in person, to follow up and close the sale. Because very rarely in what we're doing are you going to get the sale closed in mass, right? I mean, unless you're selling a $49 a month subscription or a box that's going to solve their problem. If you're really you're managing their assets and you're evaluating their needs, selling life insurance or an annuity, you're not going to be able to just say, here, click this button and buy now.
Right.
Right. So we've really got to drive to an appointment and to close as a client, and you've got to make sure that that's the end in mind. And everything is only designed to end up getting a client, but that's designed to get an appointment
Yeah.
ahead of
Yeah.
time. On
That's
that
the
note,
big message. I don't have anything else to add
Yeah.
there. I
Yeah.
think that's it.
yeah, and we could do, that could be a 3-day seminar as well, but.
Right. Well, that's what we help
yeah.
all our clients do, is set the webinars up and get the
Including
content
the
right.
technical pieces.
Yeah, including all these technical pieces. So for any of you who don't stress about those, we'll walk you through how to do those on an individual basis, because it does kind of depend on what your niche is,
Yeah.
which one of these would apply to you,
Yeah.
and also what kind of work you're doing and what your volume is. And there's a few other factors to determine which one of these you do. So
Yeah.
we'll work that out with you individually.
Yeah, on that note, we'll call it a day here.
All right, see you next time.